Hey everyone. This is Sarita Dua from Portland, Oregon. I'm so happy to be here. Myself and my lovely co-host Via. We're so excited to have you join us twice a month here on Wednesday Power Playbooks. And every chance we get in these sessions, we get a chance to interview rock star agents and leaders in business that not only are crushing it in today's marketplace, but are so generous with their time and their talents. And they literally open up their playbooks as to what's working for them today. And Sophia's going to kick it off in more detail, but today we're going to talk about how to get new agents into production and into production quickly. What are the exact tactics that are involved? And these three lovely guests are going to share exactly what they're doing to get you up and running quickly. And with that, I'll turn it to Via.
Yeah, thank you. And what we're really talking about today is agent launch. And I know a lot of you guys call it onboarding, but that act of creating and bringing agents that newly recruited onto your team, whether they're new or experienced agents, getting them into production as quickly as possible, getting them adapted to how your team does business and your productivity rhythms and your culture and all of that stuff, right? It's interesting. I'm going to introduce our panelists in a minute, but I coach, consult, and recruit a lot of teams, probably over 100 a year, conversations that I have. And one of the biggest challenges I get from people when I ask them what their number one problem is they'll say, well, it's recruiting. They'll say it's recruiting. And often I will find when I start unpeeling the onion, it's actually not recruiting. What it is they don't have a cogent agent launch program that they are recruiting into. And so they say it's recruiting because they are stopped at the pass with not having anything to recruit them to. So in actuality, it's not actual recruiting, it's their agent launch or lack of an agent launch program, because it simply becomes too much to be in production and to recruit. And oh, by the way, now we have to train agents. That's what we call the messy middle, by the way. So I invited Marley Jackman, who leads our launch at Place. She has a massive job to lead two large group launches every single month, a new agent launch and an experienced agent launch. And we're going to dive into that. Jake DaRosa and Jacqueline Smith, who have adopted launch extraordinarily well and for a long time. They are long adopters of having an agent launch program. So I couldn't think of better guests to come on and talk about not only how to form and create a launch, but how to keep it ongoing, how to keep it fresh, what the world is. What is a pre-launch anyway? What do you do when you're offering launch once a month and you hire an agent 3 months before it starts, right? What does that look like? So welcome, you guys. And I think we should start a little bit. Jacqueline and Jake, why don't you kind of share a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what do your teams look like, and how long you've had a good launch program to start with. Jacqueline?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jacqueline Smith. I am in the Vancouver, Washington, Southwest Washington, and Portland market, so right across the bridge from Sarita. And our team has right now 14 agents. We do between 3 and 4 million in commissions. And for us here, that is between 120 to 150 in volume. I started building my team back in 2016, 2017, and so did not have an agent onboarding or launch program at that time. So it's definitely been an evolution. And currently, I feel really confident in what we offer to agents as they come on board. Not that we're perfect, but maybe remembering back through our conversation, from where I started, it's definitely come a long way. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to share.
I love it. Jake, what about you?
Hey, I'm glad you started with Jacqueline because I would have kicked it to her ladies first, right? So I'm glad Sacramento, California is where we're from. Our team, we usually have anywhere between 8 and 12 partners on the team, two operations folks, partners. We help between 70, I mean, it's kind of a range, 70 to 150 families every year. One of the things that I really love the most is the launch program has definitely helped. In fact, our core partners over the last 7 years, I have one partner who's been with me 6 years, another partner who's been with me over 3, and each of those partners have every single year they've been partnered up with us. They've done over 20 transactions in every single year, including last year where the market was down 40%. So when you dig into a good launch program and get them set up in the right habits and right successes, it definitely pays a lot of dividends.
Yeah, I love that. Marley, I kept you to last because I'm so excited to have you on today because this is your full-time job. This is all you do, right? Is focus on agent launch. So can you tell everybody, what you do for Place, how long you've been doing it, and a little bit about your role? I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, so I am our executive director of agent launch, which is a fancy way of saying I help run the onboarding and launch of all of the new agents who join Place that are part of our teams like Jacqueline and Jake's and Sarita's and Via's that are coming through the Place system. So myself, we have a launch coach that works with me and a virtual professional. We launch about 200 agents every single month through the Place system. And we are focused on getting them into production quickly, helping them learn our tools, models, systems, best practice, day in the life, everything that they need to know to really be set up for success and lay that foundational work so that by the end of their launch period, they are ready to kind of stand alone within their team, within that Place model, and have all of those basic things kind of up and running for them and have built good habits that are going to carry them through.
I love that. Marley, I'm curious, do we have data on the typical, because I know we have a new agent launch track that we offer monthly. We have an experienced agent launch track, and I think experience is around a dozen deals. If once an agent's done about 12 transactions, correct me if I'm wrong, we consider them experienced. Do we have any data on the average amount of pending and sold transactions a new agent has coming out of launch and an experienced agent has coming out of our launch?
Yeah. So if our new agent, and I will say if they follow the program, because I mean, you got to do the work to get the results, right? But for our agents that successfully complete our launch program, they're averaging about 3 transactions at the end of our launch. And our experienced agents who successfully follow the program are averaging somewhere between 9 and 12.
Just want everybody to let that sink in. That is in their first 90 days. She's talking brand new agents. I had a new agent go through our launch, and I'm in Seattle, Washington, and I have a very high price point. So a lot of the times, Marley, I will see national numbers and I adjust them down. I'm like, yeah, our units are lower. She did 4 transactions in her first 120 days with the team. 90 of those was with launch. So I am walking, living proof that those numbers work in all markets. First question I have for you, Marley, what is the difference between onboarding and launch? And I do want Jacqueline and Jake to weigh in on this too, but every time I meet with agents, I meet with, 108 teams a year to pick a number. And most of them don't call it launch. Most of them actually say it to me. Their term is onboarding. So can you kind of walk me through or walk us through what you see the difference?
Yeah, we were really intentional about separating those two things out. So when an agent joins a Place team, the first thing that they go through is an onboarding period. And Jacqueline put this really well in a conversation we had that onboarding is kind of like housekeeping. When you're being onboarded, you're doing paperwork with the team, paperwork with the brokerage, you're getting your keys, figuring out where the bathrooms are in the hallway, how to get set up on the copier, even things like getting your team email set up, being added to your CRM, ordering business cards, folders, all of that stuff, we categorize into onboarding because while all of those things are important and need to happen, those aren't really like dollar productive activities. An agent having a business card does not suddenly get them a client or make them be productive. So we've separated those two out so that the agents have the correct mindset around it, so that they're not thinking like, I can't start because I didn't get my business card or my email signature doesn't link to my Facebook page or any of those other things that we can sometimes get hung up on. So we're really intentional about onboarding is minutia. And while it can be important minutia, it's kind of those back-end tools you're getting set up so that you're ready to go into launch. And launch is 100% productivity focused. So when they're in launch, and we consider launch the beginning of their 100 days of productivity within the team. So when they come into launch, everything else is set up. So there's no barriers. They can't say, well, Jacqueline, I can't do that because XYZ never got set up for me. Or Jake, I can't host an open house this weekend because I don't have a key yet. Like, we make sure all those barriers to entry are taken care of before they're jumping into productivity, so that they can just lean into our systems, tools, and lead generation, which is ultimately going to lead them to clients and transactions, and create, not only help them hit those financial goals that they had, have it as a win for the team, and create retention and stickiness within the team too.
I love that. Jacqueline and Jake, from a team owner perspective, what do you guys do during onboarding that's different from launch?
Well, I think you covered it really well, Marley. And in my mind as a team owner, what I've realized is everything is really a repeat of what we learned when we were learning to work with buyers and sellers. And just like you wouldn't want your seller to be counting days on market, right? Even the second that they sign the listing agreement, because there's work that needs to be done to prepare the listing. You need photos, you need to get the house ready for showings. And days on market begin when you publish that listing. And in this business, we have such a high failure rate in real estate. And I think a big part of that is because of people's mindsets. And when we bring someone in and we're not clear on what the purpose of onboarding, say, for example, is, and then the launch process, I think sometimes they can get intertwined, and really it becomes this 90-day of like ramping up housekeeping, doing maybe a little bit of productivity in there, or lead generation or income producing activities, and it extends this process out for too long for people. And it's really important that they have a good solid launch and early wins, so that their mindsets don't get affected early on. And so I think for us, it's just making sure that when they launch, they have everything ready to go to actually do income producing activities. And that includes, even for us, having their database uploaded into our CRM. That has to be done prior to launch. It includes a lot of, just video training. I'm like, do it at home in your jammies, And so I think it's just all of the back end learning, even the basics of how to operate your CRM, whatever CRM you're using, and then being ready to go on day one, so that there's that clear line of definition between what is housekeeping and now what is, we're going to build your business now.
So I'm hearing housekeeping and tech setup, anything that, MLS, login, how to, all of that, anything it takes for them to be ready to sit down and activate into production on day one of whatever launch you have.
Absolutely.
Okay. Jake, what about you? Anything to add there?
Yeah, it's similar to what Jacqueline says. I mean, just getting rid of any friction, right? Because if there's friction, there's not going to be action. So we have I have a whole back end list that our operations team actually cross checks to make sure that what they need is correctly set up, that they have the videos they need for training, that they have all their logins, that they've been communicated with, that they understand and know exactly how to use our systems, that they're starting the training, those types of things. So just really eliminating the friction is such a huge piece of it, because if you have that friction, there's so many things you could do in our business that you want just let's point them in the direction and let's let them go, right? So
yeah. So, Jacqueline and Jake, staying on you in a minute, you guys have it dialed in, you've been doing this for a long time, but go back to that really friggin' crazy, messy middle when you're like the chief production person on your team. Jacqueline, I remember you well during that time, even though we may not have known each other, because I remember watching it kind of from afar through Ben. You're at 350, then I don't know, 750, you kind of had these big leaps and maybe 1.4. I remember you kind of progressing through that, where you're chief recruiter, chief producer, probably chief launch person. and, probably very much managing some kind of an admin, I'm guessing, right? That's the messy middle where we have like 4 roles. What did you do to, back then, before you really had a launch, what did you do on your own to kind of figure out how you were going to be able to recruit and train these agents?
Yeah, it was very messy. I think the biggest thing that I did that helped me that I see some people not doing is I first leveraged completely out of buyer transactions. So I had a showing partner and then someone who progressed into a buyer's agent, and I trained those two. It was directly shadowing me, working with me, and I felt really comfortable leveraging completely out of buyers. And that really, buyers just take more time. You're on showings, you're at inspections, and just having that leveraged out did give me my time back. When I decided to scale, I was in a position where I had these two with me that had been on a lot of appointments with me. They'd been lead generating right beside me for a year and a half, 2 years. And so I did take some time to ramp them up on listings. I went on every appointment with them. I didn't go on an appointment alone. And I quickly did also decide, and not everyone can do this, but I decided to leverage out of production for a period of time. And I said, I'm going to focus on recruiting only. And I'm going to bring a lot of people on, and I'm going to ramp up the team in order to replace a bulk of my personal production. So a lot of it at that in the early stages was really just, shadowing me and me going on appointments and really consulting with a couple of agents. As we ramped up, it was extremely challenging for me to give people that level of training and one-on-one coaching. And so it really was important at that time. It was just kind of like I hate it looking back because it was a tough time, but it was a bit of a sink or swim. You're coming on and we're going to give you all these tools. We're going to give you access to everything. It was like, here's the gym, come in and work out, and I'll be here to cheer you on. But there was not a lot of hand holding, and it was sink or swim. So that was kind of the messy, I'd say probably first couple of years of scaling the team was really imperfect. And I just had to be okay with it's not perfect, and the right people at that time, right? That was my season. I just knew the right people, they see the vision, they see where we're going, and I'm just going to have to be okay with some mess and some imperfection.
So Jacqueline, if we go through that 2 or 3 years, do you kind of remember your like unit number of agent count as they progressed? Like year 1, it was X, year 2, what was that?
Like per agent count, you mean?
Just like how many agents did you have and how many units did you do year 1, year 2, year 3, kind of through that?
Yeah, when I first started scaling, I had 2 agents, and we closed, one was a showing partner, one was a buyer's agent. We closed 87 units. And then the following year, it's kind of hard to give that because I started in May.
Mm-hmm.
And so in May, I started ramping into recruiting, and my goal was to be at 12 agents by the end of that year. And that year, so, I don't know exactly, right, what I was at any given time, but by the end of that year, we were at 12 agents. We closed 137 units, but a lot of them were just new, right? And they were ramping up. A couple of experienced people partnered with us. And then the following year, we went from 137 to, I think it was like 207. So that was a big leap year for us. And I did, at the end of that year, I did lose, some people. And at the same time, we did over 2 million in commissions. And I thought, okay, this was kind of my transition year. Yeah. Over, out of the messy middle. So there's lots of things I'm not proud of during that time, but I accomplished my mission, which was to get out of doing so much of the production. I still do production, about 10% of our production is by me. And I try to keep it under that. But at that time, my goal was not perfection, or even, to be honest, at the time, it wasn't actually a great, probably, agent experience, even, to be honest, because it was just me. I didn't have launch, I didn't have leverage. And so it was, though, something I had to endure. And I was really upfront about it with people I was bringing on, that we were in this phase, and that once we got through it, then we could go back and refine. So right or wrong, that's what it was.
Huge. That's a really important message for everybody to hear, that it does look messy. It's not always perfect. And that growth is just not clean. Jake, what did it look like for you? I'd love you to kind of walk us through, the kind of how Jacqueline did. And then we'll hit specifics from Marley, but I think this is so important.
Yeah, I'd say my best friend became video really quickly, which is what I found was that most partners that started out, they all had very similar questions. So, and I'm talking, I go as granular as, hey, here's how you find an open house, or here's how you set up your previews to go look at, and just record my screen while I'm rolling through Metro List. Here's what you need to do to sign up for your MLS. So video became really important to me, having that library of training, which they could always go back to. I have myself giving buyer consultation, the listing presentation, all the different things on video so that they can watch it from another perspective. So that's been a huge piece. As far as the onboarding piece of it, and bringing partners in, when I first started, it was just me, literally, like one person. I think I did 46 transactions that year. So it was, pretty rough. And then we brought on some support and brought on other partners. And the one thing I've been, like Jacqueline talked about, I've been super blessed to have is I now have 3 of my partners that are we call listing certified in our world. Basically, I trust every single one of them to go on a listing presentation with one of our newer partners and help them secure the listing. And even some of them, they team up. So getting that in place where you can leverage off you having to go on every listing. But prior to that, I was on every listing doing buyer consults until they could do it themselves. So it was a walk with them down the path before I let them walk alone. And so then from there, just putting into play the systems, the training, the coaching, and ramping up our partners and helping them along the way. But it's pretty cool to watch. Our team has organically grown to, especially with such longtime partners, that everyone wants to see everyone succeed. So they're always jumping in to help, because they know when the team wins, they actually win themselves. When we have more signs of the yards, it's easier for them to take a listing. When we have more evidence of success, it's easier for them to win as well. So that's been a really huge piece of it for me.
I love that. I'm hearing both of you kind of say that you started off apprenticing, really just doing your normal activities so that you didn't slow down your personal sales momentum, and just never going to meetings alone. If you're going to do something, Marley put it in chat, if you have to explain something more than once, make a video. I used to stick videos on myself, like presenting multiple offers to a seller, presenting listing paperwork to a seller. Even on speakerphone, I would sometimes stick a video on me, like, going through multiple offers with a client, or talking to a buyer, all those scenarios that are super specific, and they got thrown in our video library. And some of them were viewed like 28 times by agents, just over and over again, because that specific situation, I couldn't have explained it better than sticking a video camera on myself. Sarita, you also have a team. I mean, I'm kind of putting you like as interviewee now instead of interviewer, but anything to add to this conversation?
Well, I'm just listening, and I appreciate you doing the heavy lifting today, Via. But the conversation, what I love is you guys just sort of stumbled through it with the focus and a determination on your goal. Like, I love Jacqueline saying, like, look, I pretty much took a time out on production. I was willing to take a setback because I knew how important this was. And although not every agent stayed with you that first year or so, The fact that you were so committed and you hit your goal and you were very clear on which items took away from your time. For example, making that early call about buyers taking a lot of time. Let me focus on training buyers and showing help so I get that leverage so then I can focus on listings and training and recruiting. Both of you are very clear. And the idea that Vija, you just emphasized, which is you're doing it anyways, to the apprentice effect of taking everyone with you, as well as creating a video every time you have a repeatable process. It just makes so much sense. I think that's where I'm listening as a team member myself, that team leader myself that wants to grow. It is overwhelming. So not only is the middle messy, but it's like there's so many people that are like, I know I need to do this, but maybe I'll just work really hard as a single agent so I can avoid this. And the reality is it's a tunnel you got to get through because the other side is so bright, and you need to do it, but you have to do it in a way that there's a method to the madness.
Yeah, for sure. I want to kind of switch it to Marley now. So Marley, I really want to kind of spend some time doing a deep dive into, in our case, what a 12-week launch looks like. Hey, Jacqueline, how many days did it used to be and why?
It was 86 days, and it was a very detailed spreadsheet with a lot of links. And it was 86 days because apparently, I guess it's like a restaurant industry thing, that you'd get like 86 if you didn't.
It's an anything thing. Getting 86 is like getting sliced. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like, you don't do this, then you're 86.
I remember getting like a launch from Ben at one point, and I was like, why is it 86 days? And that's when I learned it. It was like, it's not 90, it's like 86 because they get 86 if they don't make it.
Yeah.
And actually, it's funny, Marley, you're going to dive in right now, but I was asking you if you had a typical launch program of like 115 agents. I specifically asked you, I go, how many of them will you have on day 90? And what did you answer to me?
Probably about 80.
So out of 115 agents who start, she'll have from 115, it'll go down to 80 in 90 days. That's actually probably higher than normal.
Yeah.
Isn't it like the 75 hard of onboarding, basically?
Yeah.
Right? Like you're going to have people fall out. They can't do it because it's not easy, but it's just discipline and consistency.
Yeah. Launch definitely is not an easy program. I'd say it's like a 75 medium.
Yeah.
We don't make them work out and twice a day and take cold showers. But
that might be easier. No, I'm kidding.
I think we do people a favor because sometimes the barrier to getting a real estate license is almost too easy. And you don't always get told, like you learn nothing in real estate school about what it means to be a salesperson, what it means to be a real estate agent, all the elements that come from that. And so I think that kind of sets people up for failure in a way that day one, you're excited, you know how to measure an acre and the different pitches of roofs. And then you get in and have to figure out how to find a client, how to use tech, how to negotiate. And it can be overwhelming. And it's oftentimes just not what people thought. So our program is intentional, not just to be hard to say, like, if you can't make it here, you can't make it, but just to be like, hey, this is what it's like. And I would rather you know that this is what it's going to be like to be like a full-fledged productive real estate professional in your first 2 weeks, rather than take 6 months to get there. Because if this isn't what you thought it was, and this isn't what you are willing to do or want to do, like I would rather you take that back to your family and your finances now and make a decision rather than drain your savings over the next 6 months, let people down, be in a state of like stress and panic. So it's intentionally like hard because real estate is hard. Like this is not an easy industry to be in. And
we're all like, yes, preach it.
We just want them to see the reality of like, what is my world going to look like in those first 2 weeks, not have it be like this slow burn where it just takes forever to figure out.
So Marley, we're going to dive into, specifically what goes into a 12-week launch. But since you said that, just kind of leading into that, I would like to share a concept that I coach to, and that's the concept of front end or back end filtering. And what I mean is for teams that are in growth mode, in my mind, you can grow in one of two ways. You can either spend a lot of time upfront screening and recruiting candidates, right? Our colleague Jay White does that. He spends a lot of time upfront. There's group interviews involved. There's a process involved and auditions and all of that. And then they start, and the goal would be that they would have a higher likelihood of making it because you spent the time up front. The other way, I think of my friend Michael Perna, who we've had on this webinar, is a back end filter, where pretty much most people who are willing to have a real estate license can go ahead and start with his team, and they have a very excellent launch program that, and I can't remember the numbers, maybe 50% will make it through. I can't quite remember what it is. The idea being that they can't predict who's going to make it and who's not. So let's let them in, making sure that they're culturally aligned and ethical. There's some baselines there. And that I private coach a couple clients, and one of mine has basically a launch program that's actually part of their recruiting funnel. They invite everybody into it, and then, a certain percentage will join the team and some won't. Marley, now that you've been leading launch for, a couple of years at Place, what do you think is best, front end or back end?
I think either can work as long as you have very clear expectations. Because what ends up happening is we talk ourselves in and like fall in love with people's potential. And I saw a quote that says, when we look at someone's potential, we're not actually seeing their potential. We're seeing, what would I do if I was in their shoes? And I think that's probably the number one thing as leaders and successful real estate agents we do when we have someone sitting in front of me, is we don't look and say like, wow, this person could be incredible. It's, wow, if I had this opportunity at their age or at their phase, like, here's how I would take advantage of it. And that causes us sometimes to hold on to people too long from the emotional standpoint. So I think the back end filtering is great. Give people the opportunity, sometimes even let them surprise you, because people will surprise you both ways. You'll interview someone and you're like, this person's going to be incredible. And then 3 weeks later, you're like, where did that person go? Who was that? Because that's who's shown up in the office every day. And sometimes you interview people that you're like, okay, we'll try it. And then they're incredible and they turn out to be like even leaders within the team. So I like the opportunity of giving them a chance. But if you're going to do that, you have to have really clear expectations going into it. And I think that's one thing that we've done really well with our launch program, and we'll show you some of it, is there's no interpretation of whether or not you did what was asked of you. Now we can look and say, did you do it well? Do you need help with things? Do you need coaching around things? But you made the calls or you didn't. You hosted the open house or you didn't. You practiced the script or you didn't. And if you don't have clear expectations, you'll always make excuses, right? Like, well, this person's not doing great, but I was on vacation for a week, so I really wasn't there to help them that week. So it's okay. We'll give them another month and see. But when you have a really clear plan that they have to plug into and follow, it takes the emotion out of it. It's not about whether or not you like them, whether or not they're fun to be around or people on the team like them. It's, did they live up to their end of the bargain?
Okay, so rapid fire, while Marley's pulling up her doc, rapid fire, Jake, Jacqueline, Sarita, do you do a front end or a back end recruiting, basically? Jake.
I'd say both. Front is, definitely we have the piece of talking with them, but what people say versus how they show up can be vastly different. So you got to kind of do, in my opinion, I like to do both.
Okay, Jacqueline, what about you?
I have done it both ways. And even with clear expectations, I find that the back end for me, I fall in love with people. I have empathy and they build relationships with you, with the team. It's extremely challenging to handle that later. Even there's valid reasons that always happen. So I have moved to a lot more on the front end because of my personality type. I think everyone's different. You have to know yourself.
Sarita, what about you?
I'm going to own it. I'm slower to hire than I should be, and then I'm slower to fire than I should be. So I am more front end than I want to be. I need to get people into the system and let the system do some of the heavy lifting.
I'm more back end, but part of that is because I have place launch. And so I have a system that I can lean on and I feel comfortable with, that I know is consistent. And I've just done this long enough that, I have just stopped trying to predict who's going to make it. That's interesting to hear. Marley, what do we have in front of us?
Yeah, this is, I'll dive into our launch.
Exciting.
I would say too, is either work, like I think Jacqueline, what you said is you have to know your personality. You have to know what you're going to be able to do, what lines you're going to be able to hold. And if you even want that, like if that's going to make you, are you going to look at your business and be happy with it if those are the lines that you held? But one thing about if you're going to be a back-end person, I would caution against is like resource allocation. Just if you're going to make them everyone can come in, but you got to prove it. Like, don't buy business cards on day one. Don't open up lead flow on day one, like have some barriers to spend. Like it shouldn't cost you. If I bring in 10 agents this month, I shouldn't have $1,000 marketing bill when at the end of the month, 2 people are still there. So just be cautious on bringing that in and what that looks like against your P&L. But what we have here, this was kind of the first way that we did our place agent launch, and to kind of I'll show you the evolution of it as well. But we just kind of created this 12-week spreadsheet that had all of the activities and expectations for our agents as they went through that launch program. So you'll see we had some prerequisites, ongoing shadowing and things that they were expected to do. We break their first week of launch, which would be, their first week in with the team and productivity by day to kind of ease them into it. And then we start breaking it down to weekly activities. And we have this outlined for them for their entire 12 weeks. And one of the things I would say too is you will notice that weeks like 4 through 12 have very little change. Like the activity really isn't changing. And I think sometimes when we're creating a launch program or an onboarding program or whatever you want to call it, we think that every week we have to be bringing something new and something different. And what our launch program is really focused on is consistency. So even though they're going to be doing the same activities over and over again for 12 weeks, we're still putting that in front of them. You need to do these activities again this week. You need to host this open house again. You need to make this many calls again, because it's not just about teaching them to do it one time. And I think that's another mistake that we make sometimes with our launch trainings that we're creating is we think like, I told Sarita she needs to host an open house one time and then said, but like do it every weekend. And that was it. That was the whole conversation. And then 2 months later, she's never hosted an open house again. We're like, I told you, why didn't you do it? So it's really helping build that long-term habit and helping them see launch is not an event. That's another thing I like to say to our groups. It's not something that you do to say you did it and it's done. It's really meant that by the time week 13 comes here, you're probably still doing all of these same things again. You just don't need the spreadsheet to tell you to do it because you've built the habits around it. And then within this as well, you'll see how much of this is in blue. I am Team Jake here on make it a video, right? These are things that my team and I get questions on every single day, that we have people reaching out. How do I do this? What script do I use here? What do I say here? So all of these things in blue are hyperlinks to a resource to support this. So we're not just going to say, complete 250 dials in Brivity. If you click on Brivity, it's going to take you to a folder of scripts that you're going to use to make the dials, as well as a video about how to dial through Brivity, how to log an interaction in Brivity, how to set an appointment in Brivity. So no matter what outcomes come from the activity, like here's our common questions we get when we ask you to do that, you have all those resources first. Because sometimes we get someone and we bring them in and they're really productive, and it kind of feels like we're excited for them, but it kind of feels like a drag because the more productive they get, the more questions they ask us and the more they come to us needing help. So if you can kind of throw some of those resources in there, it'll really slow down how much they need your personal attention or one-on-one with you. The way we look at it, our goal with this is that they're not coming to you until it's time to like write an offer or negotiate an agreement or fill out paperwork. And we're okay sending them back to you for that because that's productive activity. That's leading to business for the team. If I had Jacqueline's agents going to her every single time they had to make a phone call saying, what do I say? who am I supposed to call? What do I do today? Or going to Jake and being like, how do I make a flyer for an open house? They wouldn't be big fans of our launch program because that's not really leverage for them. So
And we should probably say that, Marley, we're not a brokerage. And I think we all here can say that we know that writing contracts and the legality of being a real estate agent does need to be part of launch, right? But I think we're all here saying too, we can all leverage our brokerages. Every brokerage that I know about has either online or live training, right? That's, forms classes and different things. And I do want to point out, I talk to a lot of teams that have these really strict 2 or 3 week, what they would call onboarding or launch. And it's their agents learning everything they need to know about contracts, but they're not getting appointments to be in a position to write a contract.
Yep.
Yeah. Can you kind of go into the big rocks, Marley, that we're seeing? So if it's 12 weeks, could you kind of walk through maybe like what the goal is or the big rocks for every week or every couple of weeks on here?
Yeah. So our first 2 weeks of launch, what they are focused on is calling their sphere. So we believe that everyone that comes into our organization knows people. You have friends, you have family. Even if you don't like them that much, you do know them. And so we spend our first 2 weeks really learning self-promotion through, as we're learning our scripts, asking people for business, offering resources to people. We do that with our sphere because number one, it's going to give us probably the best return on investment that we can do in real estate. They're the most likely people to use us and refer us because we've already established that trust with them. And number two, we know they're probably going to be a little sloppy in those first couple of weeks because they're just learning it and it's brand new. And if they have to mess up in front of someone, I want it to be their grandma, not a random, $500,000 online lead that I'm putting in front of them that our team is going to miss out on if they fumble that. So they do spend those first 2 weeks as they're getting used to using a script and calling people in self-promotion, doing that with their database, their people that they brought into the team.
And also the CRM, right? The tech, how to work the tech of that database.
Again, if you send grandma like 15 listing alerts on accident, it's going to be okay. She doesn't even know how to check her email. Versus if you're doing that, like for a seller that you set an appointment for and you start accidentally sending them a bunch of random stuff, it could go a little bit sideways. So they're learning with a group of people that are also understanding, which is going to help their confidence. They're also going to get some wins. Like people are going to be happy for them. They're going to be excited for them. They're going to be willing to give them your email address, like things to boost their confidence before we put them in front of a bit of a colder audience through our different prospecting techniques so that they feel, more prepared for that and just have a little bit thicker skin by the time they get there.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. So we start with database.
Yeah. Then from the prospecting standpoint, when we go into weeks like, 3 through 12, we focus on continuously reaching out to our sphere. We teach them how to do those follow-up plans, but also that outbound prospecting, whether that is calling through like team leads, maybe in a pond or group that they're calling through, or doing circle prospecting around a neighborhood. Every single day, they have focused lead generation goals, calling around an open house, door knocking where they have a buyer, and we're just providing them with all of the resources to do that outbound prospecting so that they know that they're not just sitting there every day waiting to receive a lead from the team. It's their job to create opportunities and bring that as well. So in the middle of that there, we have in their 4th week, we do a mass action day where we ask them to either call 1,000 people in one day or have 50 real estate conversations logged in one day, depending on what type of dials their team is doing. So
shout out to Cole on my team who just did his this week and got his 443 dials to hit 50 contacts, by the way.
It was awesome. So we have them do that right in the middle of there. And then some of the other bigger things that we have them do in their first 30 days, we ask them to preview 100 homes in their market so that they can become local experts. This is for newer agents. We don't have that as part of our experience launch because we assume they've seen 100 homes, but for new agents, they're going to go see 100 homes in their market. We also ask them to do script practice 5 days a week. And not only that, but we provide them a resource to find people to do script practice with. I think that's another one too, is we tell people to do stuff and then they don't know how to do it. And then they're nervous to ask us. So if you're going to send them, go do an open house, kind of like Jake said, here's how you find an open house. find a script practice partner. Here's where you can find script practice partners. Yes, it's a little bit more of a setup on your end at the beginning, but it's going to make it easier for them to actually take action on it as they're going through and doing it. And then we meet with them once a week live for a live training throughout the course of their launch. Their first week, we spend every day with them for an hour a day. And then weeks 2 through 12, we're meeting with their group live once a week to do a training that's typically around lead conversion, follow-up, closing, no matter what type of lead generation they're doing, helping them get that contact to close. And then we have some pre-recorded live trainings that correlate as well.
Cool. What else? Are you going to keep going down?
Sure. So that's kind of the big overview. You'll see kind of what this looks like here. We've got some videos recording on here, what they need to watch. We record a lot of script videos too. Sometimes we tell people to learn a script by handing a piece of paper, but a lot of people are auditory learners or want to see someone do it. Jake and Jacqueline are both in our launch program here doing some scripts that they've recorded for us. Actually, Sarita's in here too. All of you guys are in our launch program here with some script recordings. So they're not only just hearing from us, but different voices. So if you have a team, that could be a cool example is to have different people record things and save it. So they're hearing, slightly different delivery styles or tones or personality types as they're going through. But yeah, we measure their progress. They mark things off in here. Like I said, this was our older version of it. Our new version, we've moved into a learning management system that I can show you if you want. But this worked. I mean, this worked for 5 years, and it doesn't seem super fancy or high tech as what we have now. But we used this for 5 years, and this was a way that we could measure how our agents were doing. Our teams have access to this to come in and check their progress at any time. What are they marking off? There's a spot they can make notes here if they had questions about something or needed further help with anything.
Okay, so I love this. So a couple things that I wanted to point out on this. Number one, the team operator, team owner, team leader, whatever you want to call you, the owner of the team, you have to have visibility into this, even if you're not running launch. So let's say that you have someone on your staff running launch. Be sure that you're getting visibility into how your agents are showing up and what they're doing. So that would be number one. Number two, this is very fleshed out and filled out over the years. My hunch, Marley, is that it started a lot more simple and you added things as you went. You kind of started where you started, and then over time, each time you did it, you would kind of fine tune, maybe add a link, add a script. Maybe it was one script to start with, and now maybe it's 17 because you kept adding. Is that fair?
Yeah, it started honestly more comprehensive, and then because it was onboarding and launch. So it actually used to be way more than this. And then we were like, they're picking all the easy stuff here. Like they're updating their social media instead of calling their sphere. So that's when we initially separated the two so that you couldn't look at, here's what I need to do this week and find like the easy thing to do. There's not an easy thing to do each week. The easiest thing to do is watch a video and get some training, but it takes away any outside stuff that they could be focused on. So this became really productivity focused. And then we just built out the resources because version 1 of this probably had like 2 hyperlinks. So we would just say, learn the open house script. And they'd say, what's the open house script? And we're like, okay, yeah, we should probably tell you what that is. So we just continued kind of building this out, creating resources, linking resources. And it's almost like you're creating problems for yourself as you're going, like you're seeing how to push it through and break it. And then where we need to go back in and fix it. So we would go through and say like, man, everyone just got to week 4 and we got 10 emails asking us this question. We did not play that well. Like we need to go back in and fix that. So you don't have to wait for it to be perfect either. We've had times where we got a lot of people that said, this didn't work, or I don't understand this, or I tried this and this didn't happen. And you just have to be willing to go and make adjustments. But I wouldn't hold it until it's, perfect or looks great or feels really fancy. I can show briefly, like this is the program that we're using now. Clearly an elevated experience for our agents. They don't have a spreadsheet and everything here. Everything is broken into this system that they're using. It's all the same data from our spreadsheet and it's beautiful and it's nice, but the other version also worked fine too. So if we waited,
There's that handsome guy.
if we waited until we had this version to
The 20-year-old picture.
Can I make just a quick observation as I'm watching you, right? There's so many people that will have a reaction of, oh my gosh, it's so much work. It's so structured. I'm looking at it from the agent perspective. Like, I have to do this all every day, but like to flip that around to the glass being half full, how how much gratitude I would have so much gratitude to just have a blueprint for success that I just need to follow. I'm going to share a personal story. My son is a inside salesperson for a sports team. And when we got licensed in real estate, I got licensed 2 decades ago. Like you said, I knew what a hectare was, but I'd walk in and I would have my stapler and my desk mat. You can see how old I am. Like we were not even, paperless at that point. And I would have my office perfectly organized, but I didn't know what to do. And to just have this framework of this is your success formula. Just do this every day. In his sports team career, he has that. They have a very clear onboarding and launch, and they will make it or they won't, but they never know why they didn't make it. If they didn't, they just chose not to follow the plan. And so there's great gratitude, I think, in having these guardrails and having it very specific on what we need to do. So just watching you present that's what jumped out at me.
Marley, I was hoping you could just give, in some broad brushstrokes, how this would look different for an experienced agent coming, because on your team, I just want to share with everybody, I made a big mistake early on in my team, and I told myself that an experienced agent didn't need a launch. Because I thought, well, they already know what they're doing. They know how to sell real estate. And I was wrong, because they came on my team for a reason. They came on my team to learn how we do real estate and to work with us and to learn our systems and to get our lead generation sources and learn how to convert the way we do and use our things that we had. And so they knew how to do real estate, yes, but they needed to learn how to do real estate the Vija real estate way, or the, Jacqueline Smith evergreen real estate way, and the, Jake DaRosa and the Sarita Dua, Ask Sarita, right? Way. So what are, just some broad brushstrokes, what are the differences?
Yeah. So new agent launch, it's for anyone that's done less than 12 transactions. So we assume they either don't know anything or they know it the wrong way. And we're going to start over completely foundational with the very from basic all the way up to at the end, you're pretty proficient in these different lead generation methods, conversion methods. So we kind of make this assumption, I'm going to explain to you what circle prospecting is because you either don't know or didn't do it very well before. With our experienced agent launch, it's completely different. They don't use the same spreadsheets or programs or anything. We start assuming that you at least understand definitionally what those things are. And our job is to help you focus, do what you're already doing better. So like you said, Vija, that agent has probably hosted several open houses or has probably called their sphere before, but they haven't hosted it the place way in my example, right? They haven't used our scripts. They haven't offered our resources. So our experienced agent launch actually starts in the first week, surrounded by creating and following their business plan within our team. So the first week of launch is focused on building a business plan. And then the rest of launch is helping them execute that business plan using our tools that we provide to them. So whether you hire an agent who wants to do 2 open houses a week and that's their platform, or who has a 5,000 person local database that they're farming, or who's going to circle prospect or for sale by owners and expires, it doesn't matter. We're teaching them every week how to do that at a high level by plugging in, here's our for sale by owner resources, here's our sphere scripts, here's our ways that you do a client event, so that they don't feel like we're coming away and taking away how they've done business. We're simply showing them how to do it at a more efficient level using the tools that you now have access to. And a big portion of our experience agent launch is leveraged around our tech and how to use that at a higher level, how to convert at a higher level. We use Brevity. So using Brevity, what tools are built into the platform to help you provide more value to your clients. So the goal is not to come in and say, everything you've been doing is wrong, start over. It's to say like, hey, you've been doing great. Clearly you got here. Here's how we're going to take it to the next level with all of this stuff you now have access to.
I love that. Since we're running out of time, I kind of want to finish this up with a few more questions. I think what we're going to do is do a separate webinar on pre-launch, and just make that a whole webinar, because that's really important. It is important for you guys to remain consistent, you guys meaning anyone watching or listening. And in order to do that, you probably are offering this once a month or once a quarter, even for some of you. And that means that you're hiring people who are not exactly lined up with when your launch is starting. And that's when we need to have pre-launch. I know, Jacqueline, you shared you have an immersion experience. I know our friend Spring Benson has a Hello Week. So maybe we'll have a couple, Jay White has a great one. Maybe we'll have you guys back and talk about pre-launch. But, I do want to ask you, Marley and all, Success Week. There you go, Jake. Marley and Jake and Jacqueline, what are the goals? What should be the goals of a good launch? How should you measure a good launch? How do you know if it's working?
We pay attention to activities and then the results. And I always say that the activities, that measures your effort, and then the results is measuring your skill. And so I think a lot of times, like, we didn't really have an emphasis on the results at one point back in the day. And so people were doing the activities, not getting the results. And there was some opportunity there for some coaching and some skilling up. And so I think whatever you decide your standards are, it has to have both, because it does take time for the result to show up. And yet without the effort, without the activity, I can't help you. It's not a skill issue at that point. We've got to do the work, and then we can refine the work and how you're doing it. So I'd say both.
Jake, what about you?
Yeah, I'd say similar in the activities, how they're going to show up, right? So are they doing the activities? Are they putting the work in to build their business? The results, it may take a little bit longer for them to set some appointments, but one thing I look at heavily is nurtures. And also during our team, we do scripting every day. And some of my partners straight up come and tell me and say, hey, I can tell this person isn't practicing their scripts, or they haven't changed their conversation. Because if you're not able to have good conversations with people and just connect with them, to add them into your database, to touch base with them, that's a pretty clear indicator that we need to practice somewhere in that space. Something's missing. And if they're having the same conversation and they're not necessarily getting better, then there's missing some outside practice or script practice that they're not having. So the results I look at a lot is obviously the activities, the appointments, but also how many people are they actually adding to their database from open houses, from conversations on the phone. So those are really important to me.
Marley, what KPIs are you tracking, and how are you kind of rating yourself on success in launch?
Yeah, we have very clear expectations for agents in launch about how many conversations they're expected to have every single week. We ask our agents in launch 50 conversations a week, no matter what. And then we provide feedback around that. And the reason for that is because we have such a high volume of people we're bringing through, we've been able to find some averages and different things that work out. So we're able to go back to Jacqueline and say, hey, Jacqueline, every 99 conversations a new agent has in launch, they should have a pending or closing. So if they're doing 50 conversations a week, at the end of 2 weeks, they should have someone that they're about to put under contract. If they don't, here's your skill set issue, right? If they've talked to 10 people this week, we don't need to talk about your skill set because it's an activity issue. So exactly like you were kind of saying there, Jacqueline, and then kind of going to what Jake is talking about, I'm a big fan of trust but verify. So it's not just about marking an X that I did something, in the system, because they can go through and say, hey, every single week I've talked to people, I've done these things. Being able to know how to go back into your system and actually check and see, not just saying like, well, they said they made enough contacts. You can see it in pretty much every CRM. How many calls did they make? How many conversations did they have? And then I think, Jake, like you mentioned, layering that into, cool, you've talked to 300 people and we don't have any active agreement signed. Let's hear your scripts. You've said you've been practicing every morning. Like, Give it to me. What does it sound like? So having really clear expectations around the activity, which is the effort, and then knowing roughly what results you would expect so that we can identify where there's a red flag.
Okay, I love that. We're running out of time. Marley, I think you have something for everybody, don't you?
Yes. Yes. I will have a version of the spreadsheet that I showed that you can go in and customize. So you'll have like the little template that works out there, and it'll be broken down where you can fill out your weeks. And then on the side, I'll give you some suggestions of what you could kind of fill into those weeks, but you can also customize it for yourself. So if you wanted to start with like our spreadsheet that we've been working off of, we'll have that there that you can customize for yourself.
That's amazing. So we will email that to you if you're watching live. If you're watching this on YouTube or replay, you can email us at powerplaybooks@place.com and just request the launch giveaway and launch download, and we will send that to you, and it's editable so you guys can use it. Would love to have you guys back and talk about pre-launch. I hope that's okay. I kind of promised that without checking with you, but these things happen. I say things like that all the time. Thanks for spending an hour with us, both you guys and our viewers, and we will see you guys in 2 weeks.